Blind biker's daughter. Lost after bridge collapse. Boy saved her. Bikers changed his life. Next day, rain hammered the river like fists on a locked door. Sirens cut through the night, red and blue lights sliding across the broken spine of the bridge, illuminating twisted railings and chunks of asphalt hanging over empty space. Cars stood frozen at impossible angles. People shouted names into the rain, voices cracking, dissolving into panic. Somewhere below, the river carried pieces of the road away as if they had never mattered. Ethan Cole stood at the edge of the collapse, boots planted in water and oil, staring into nothing. His hands were still raised, fingers curled as if they might remember the shape of his daughter's wrist. He didn't shout. He didn't move. The noise around him felt distant, muffled, like he was underwater himself. "She was right here," he said finally, not to anyone in particular, just to the night. "She was right here." A paramedic touched his shoulder. Ethan didn't turn. He shook his head once, slow and final, as if refusing an offer he hadn't heard. His world had narrowed to a single fact that no one else seemed to understand yet. Lily was gone, and the river had taken her without witnesses. Lily was blind, had been since birth. She navigated the world through touch, sound, memory. The bridge was familiar to her. They crossed it every week. She knew the rhythm of the metal plates, the echo underfoot, the way the wind changed halfway across. Ethan had trusted that routine, trusted the city, trusted that some things were solid enough not to disappear. The police moved fast, too fast. Flashlights swept the riverbanks. Divers were called, then delayed because the current was too strong. Clipboards appeared. Questions were asked. Answers were written down in neat lines that didn't mean anything. Missing? Presumed, swept away. Low probability. Ethan heard those words like accusations. Each one felt like a door closing. He sat on the curb hours later, soaked through, helmet resting beside him, rain dripping from the brim like a slow countdown. The patch on his vest, worn leather, faded thread, caught the light as officers passed him without looking twice. To them, he was just another biker. To Lily, he had been the entire map of the world. No one noticed the boy standing under the overpass. He was small, wrapped in a jacket that had once belonged to someone bigger, older. His shoes didn't match. One sole flapped loose with every step. He'd been sleeping there when the noise started. The crack, the scream, the sound of the river changing its mind. He hadn't run like the others. He'd crept closer, staying low, instinct sharpened by years of learning how not to be seen. He heard her before he saw her. A soft sound, not screaming now, breathing, uneven, close. The girl lay wedged between rocks and debris where the river split around a concrete support. The water hadn't taken her, not yet. Her hands were bleeding. Her eyes stared into nothing, wide and unseeing, rain streaking down her face like tears she didn't have time to cry. "Don't move," the boy whispered, though he wasn't sure why. His voice shook anyway. She turned her head toward the sound. "Daddy?" The word hit him like a blow. He swallowed hard, heart pounding so loud he was afraid she'd hear it and think the river was coming back. "No," he said quietly, "but I'm here." Up above, the lights kept flashing. The shouting went on. Decisions were being made by people who couldn't see what was right beneath their feet. And for the first time in a long while, the boy had a choice. He could slip back into the dark, let the river finish what it started, let the world stay exactly the way it had always treated him. Or he could stay. He looked at the girl's shaking hands, at the way she reached out blindly into the rain, trusting a voice she didn't know. And somewhere deep inside him, something he thought had been beaten out long ago refused to stay quiet. The boy stayed. He didn't know why at first. His legs were already tense, ready to run the moment a shout came too close or a flashlight swept the wrong way. That instinct had kept him alive longer than most promises ever did. But something about the girl's breathing, shallow, uneven, stubborn, anchored him in place. "It's loud," she said, not a complaint, an observation. Her head tilted slightly, listening to the chaos above them. "The bridge sounds different now." "Yeah," he answered. He crouched beside her, careful where he placed his weight. The rocks were slick, sharp in places, biting through the thin soles of his shoes. "It broke," she nodded once, as if confirming something she already knew. Her fingers tightened around a piece of torn fabric at her side. "Daddy fell?" The boy hesitated. Truth was dangerous, Lies were worse. He chose the narrow space between. He's looking for you. That seemed to calm her. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. Okay, she said. He always finds me. The river surged again, higher this time, licking closer to her legs. The boy swore under his breath. He shrugged out of his jacket, rolled it tight, and wedged it between the water and her knee, buying them seconds, maybe minutes. Can you move? He asked. She shook her head. My ankle hurts, and I can't feel my toes. That scared him more than the blood. Cold stole feeling first. Cold meant the river was patient. He scanned the concrete support, the tangle of rebar and debris around them. No clear path up, no rope, no ladder, just rain, noise, and gravity. Above them, Ethan Cole was breaking apart in slow motion. They'd put him under a canopy, handed him a paper cup of coffee he hadn't touched. Someone kept asking for Lily's age, her name, what she was wearing. Every question felt like a rehearsal for telling him she was already gone. She's blind, he said for the third time, voice flat. She can't see your lights. She won't wave. You have to listen. An officer nodded politely, eyes already drifting past him. We're doing everything we can, sir. Everything except hearing him. Ethan stood abruptly, shrugging off the blanket they'd draped over his shoulders. His knees screamed in protest, but he ignored it. Pain was familiar. Silence was not. You're looking in the wrong place, he said. She wouldn't go with the current. She'd curl in. She always curls in when she's scared. A diver glanced at him, rain dripping from his mask. The current's too strong near the pylons. We'll check when it slows. When? Ethan demanded. The man didn't answer. Ethan turned away before he said something that couldn't be taken back. He walked to the edge of the collapse, boots sinking into mud and shattered concrete. He closed his eyes and listened, not to the sirens, not to the shouting, but to the river itself. He'd ridden beside water most of his life. He knew when it was angry. He knew when it was waiting. Hold on, baby, he whispered. Just hold on. Below, the boy was doing math he'd never learned in school. Every rise of the water stole another inch of ground. Every shout above risked drawing attention they didn't need yet, or ever. If the wrong people saw him, questions would come. Questions led to names. Names led to places he couldn't go back to. But when he shifted to stand, the girl reached out and grabbed his sleeve. Please don't go, she said, not panicked, just certain. I can hear when people leave. He froze. I'm not going, he said quickly. I'm right here. She nodded, satisfied. You sound young, he snorted despite himself. You sound bossy. A faint smile crossed her lips, then faded as another wave slapped against the rocks. She gasped, body tensing. The boy moved without thinking, stepping into the water, bracing himself between her and the current. The cold bit instantly, sharp enough to steal his breath. He clenched his jaw and stayed upright. Okay, he muttered. Okay, okay. He looked up, past the concrete, past the broken edge of the bridge. The lights flashed. People moved like ants, frantic and blind in their own way. He cupped his hands and shouted once. Hey! His voice vanished into the rain. He tried again, louder. Down here! Nothing. The girl tilted her head. That's my dad's voice, she said suddenly. His heart lurched. What? Not yours, she clarified. The other one, the one that's angry but trying not to be. Ethan was shouting her name now, raw, unfiltered, a sound torn straight from the chest. Lily, she smiled through chattering teeth. That's him, the boy didn't think. He screamed back, throwing everything he had into it. She's here. For half a second, nothing changed. Then Ethan stopped. Silence rippled outward from him, unnatural in the chaos. He turned slowly, scanning the darkness below the bridge. Lily, he called, quieter now, focused. Baby, tap twice if you hear me. Down below, the boy whispered, Do it. She lifted her hand and knocked twice against the concrete, weak but deliberate. Ethan heard it. He lunged for the edge, ignoring the hands grabbing his vest, the voices yelling at him to stop. There, he shouted. She's there, under the support. Everything shifted at once. Orders barked, ropes thrown. Divers moved, finally, with purpose. The boy sagged in relief, and then felt the current surge harder than before. The jacket tore free. His feet slipped. He slammed his shoulder against the concrete, pain exploding white-hot down his arm. He bit back a scream, fighting to stay upright. Hey, the girl said, alarmed now. Hey, you're shaking. I'm fine, he lied. Just cold. He wasn't fine. His legs were numb. His grip was slipping. He wrapped one arm around her instinctively, shielding her as another wave crashed into them both. Above, a rope dropped, swaying wildly. Ethan was already tying knots with shaking hands, ignoring everyone else. "I'm going down," he said. A rescuer grabbed his arm. "Sir, that's my daughter." No one argued after that. The rope descended. The boy saw it and laughed once, breathless and disbelieving. "Told you," he said to the girl. "He finds you." She squeezed his arm, fingers weak but certain. "Thank you for staying." The rope brushed past his shoulder. For the first time since he'd climbed under that bridge, the boy allowed himself to think about what came next, about hands pulling him into the light, about questions he couldn't answer, about a world that didn't like boys who appeared from nowhere. But he didn't let go. Not yet. They pulled her up first. That was the rule. Someone shouted it from above, sharp and final, and everyone obeyed without question. The rope tightened around Lily's small frame, a harness made from hands and instinct. She cried out when they lifted her, more from surprise than pain, fingers clawing blindly at the air. The boy felt her grip slip from his sleeve. "Wait," he said, hoarse, not to anyone in particular, just to the moment. She's scared. "I've got her." Ethan's voice came down the rope, raw and shaking. He was already halfway over the edge, boots scraping concrete, rain plastering his hair to his face. He didn't look at the boy. His eyes were locked on Lily, on the shape of her being pulled toward the light. "Daddy!" she cried. "I'm here, baby, I'm here!" Ethan reached her as the rope steadied, wrapping his arms around her the moment she was close enough, pressing her face into his chest like he could erase the fall by sheer force. "I've got you. You're safe. You're safe." She sobbed once, hard, then went quiet. Exhaustion took her fast. The boy watched it happen from below, chest tight, breath coming in shallow bursts. The noise above swelled again, radios crackling, people shouting instructions, someone crying openly now that the fear had a place to go. No one looked down. The rope came back empty. He waited. Seconds stretched. The river surged again, higher than before, slamming against his thighs. Pain bloomed up his leg, bright and insistent. He hissed through his teeth and shifted his weight, fingers scraping raw skin against concrete as he tried to hold position. "Hey!" he shouted. "I'm still here!" The words felt stupid the moment they left his mouth. Of course he was still here. He always was. People didn't look down unless there was a reason. A rescuer leaned over the edge at last, face obscured by helmet and rain. "Kid," he called, "can you climb?" The boy looked at the wall, smooth, wet, too high. He shook his head. "I'm stuck." Another wave hit, harder than the rest. His foot slipped, his knee slammed into stone, and this time, he couldn't stop the cry that tore out of him. "Hang on!" someone yelled. The rope dropped again, swinging wide. The boy lunged for it, missed by inches, heart hammering so hard he thought it might break his ribs. He reached again, fingers brushing wet fiber, then slipping free. "Again!" he shouted. "Please!" The rope came back, closer this time. He grabbed it with both hands and wrapped it around his arm, the way he'd seen grown men do in movies. The water surged, trying to pull him sideways, but he held on, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. "Okay," he whispered to himself. "Okay." They pulled. The force yanked him off his feet, pain exploding through his shoulder. He screamed, a short, sharp sound, then bit it off as the rope lifted him clear of the water. The river thrashed below, angry at losing its grip. Hands reached down as he rose, strong hands, gloved hands. They grabbed his arms, his jacket, hauled him over the edge and onto solid ground. For a moment, he lay there on his back, staring up into white light and rain, chest heaving. The world felt too big, too loud. Someone draped a blanket over him. Someone else said something about hypothermia. Then he felt it. A presence. Heavy. Close. He turned his head slowly. Ethan Cole was standing over him. The biker looked nothing like the man who'd been shouting into the rain an hour earlier. His vest was soaked through, leather dark and stiff with water. Blood streaked his knuckles where he'd scraped them raw on concrete. His face was pale, eyes red-rimmed, jaw clenched so hard it twitched. For a long second, he didn't say anything. He just stared. The boy's instinct flared, sharp and immediate. He tried to sit up, panic flooding his limbs. "I didn't do anything," he blurted. I helped. She fell and I heard her and I—" "Hey," Ethan said, and the single word stopped him cold. Not angry, not threatening, just full. Ethan dropped to one knee in front of him, ignoring the voices telling him to move back, to give space. He gripped the boy's shoulder, firm, grounding, real. "You stayed," he said. His voice broke on the word. You stayed with her. The boy swallowed. I wasn't going to leave her. Ethan nodded once, like that answered something he'd been asking the universe for years. My daughter, he said quietly. She doesn't see. She gets scared easy. I know, the boy said before he could stop himself. She listens. She knows when people lie. Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Surprise, then, something like respect. Yeah, he said. She does. A paramedic stepped in, professional and brisk. Sir, we need to take your daughter to the hospital. And this kid, too. He's in shock. The boy flinched at the word. Hospital meant forms. Forms meant names. I'm fine, he said quickly, trying to pull away. I don't need... Ethan's grip tightened, not to restrain, but to steady. You're not going anywhere alone, he said. There was no question in it, no hesitation, just fact. The boy looked up at him, eyes wide. I can't, he whispered. I don't have... Doesn't matter, Ethan cut in. You saved my kid. Sirens wailed again as an ambulance pulled closer. The boy's heart pounded. He could already feel the walls closing in, the questions, the looks, the way people's faces changed when they realized you didn't belong anywhere. Ethan seemed to sense it. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so only the boy could hear. What's your name? The boy hesitated. Names had power. Names could be used to send you back to places you ran from. But something in Ethan's eyes told him this man didn't use names like weapons. Caleb, he said. The word felt strange on his tongue, rusty from disuse. Ethan nodded like he'd been given a gift. Caleb, he repeated, anchoring it. I'm Ethan, and you're coming with us. Us. The word landed harder than any wave. At the hospital, the world slowed down. White walls, beeping machines, the steady hum of things designed to keep people alive. Lily was taken first, wheeled away on a gurney with Ethan's hand never leaving hers. She stirred once, murmured his name, then drifted back under. Caleb sat on the edge of a bed in the next room, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like antiseptic and fabric softener. A nurse checked his vitals, clucked softly at the bruising on his leg, the raw scrape along his arm. Where are your parents? She asked gently. The question hung in the air like smoke. Ethan answered before Caleb could. He's with me. The nurse glanced between them, eyebrow lifting. Sir? He's with me, Ethan repeated, firmer now. I'll handle the paperwork. Caleb stared at him, pulse racing. This was the moment things went wrong. This was where people realized the story didn't fit neatly, but the nurse just nodded. All right, we'll need some information later. Later. Not now. She moved on. Caleb let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Ethan sat down across from him, elbows on his knees, helmet resting at his feet. He looked tired in a way that went deeper than the night, worn, like someone who'd been carrying weight for a long time. You hungry? Ethan asked. Caleb shrugged automatically. Hunger was a constant, a background noise. I guess. Ethan stood. Stay here. Don't move. He came back 10 minutes later with a paper bag and 2 cups. He handed one to Caleb. Hot chocolate. Real, not watery. Caleb's hands shook as he took it, the warmth seeping into his fingers. They sat in silence for a while. No pressure, no questions. Finally, Ethan spoke. Where do you live, Caleb? Caleb's throat tightened. He stared into the cup, watching steam curl upward. Around. Ethan nodded, accepting the non-answer without pushing. You got anyone? Caleb shook his head once, another pause. Ethan exhaled slowly. You know, he said, choosing his words carefully, I ride with a club. We're not quiet people, but we take care of our own. Caleb looked up despite himself. I'm not your own. Ethan met his gaze. There was no pity there, no charity, just something solid and deliberate. You are now. Caleb didn't know what to say to that. He took a sip of the hot chocolate instead, burning his tongue slightly and welcoming the pain because it meant he was still here. Down the hall, Lily slept. Alive, breathing, homeward bound, and for the first time in a long time, Caleb felt the ground under him stop shifting, just for a moment. Morning came without asking permission. Gray light slipped through the narrow hospital window, dull and cautious, as if it wasn't sure it was welcome after the night it followed. Caleb woke with a sharp inhale, body tensing before his mind caught up. For a split second, he didn't know where he was. The bed was too clean. The air smelled wrong. His hands closed into fists, ready to scramble. Then he heard the machines. Not loud, just steady, beeping, breathing. He turned his head. Lily lay in the bed beside him, separated only by a thin curtain pulled halfway back. Her face was pale, a faint bruise blooming along her temple, but her chest rose and fell in a calm rhythm. One hand rested on the blanket, fingers curled like she was holding onto a dream. Caleb exhaled slowly. She was still here. A nurse noticed him stir and smiled softly. "Good morning," she said. "You gave us a scare last night." He nodded, unsure what to say. Talking to adults usually meant explaining yourself. Explaining yourself usually led to places you didn't want to go. "Your friend's stable," the nurse continued, checking Lily's chart. "Minor fracture in the ankle. She'll be sore for a while, but she's tough." Caleb swallowed. "Her dad?" "In the waiting room. Hasn't left." She paused, studying Caleb's face. "You did a brave thing." He looked away. Brave was what people called things when they didn't know the cost. The door opened quietly. Ethan stepped in, coffee in one hand, helmet tucked under the other arm like it belonged there. He looked worse than he had the night before, not injured, but drained. His shoulders sagged slightly, as if the adrenaline had finally worn off and left all the weight behind. He stopped when he saw Caleb awake. "Hey," he said. Caleb pushed himself up on his elbows. "She okay?" Ethan nodded. "She's asking for you." Caleb blinked. "Me?" As if on cue, Lily shifted. Her head turned toward the sound of Ethan's voice. "Daddy," she murmured. "I'm here, baby." "And the boy?" Her brow furrowed faintly. "The one who stayed." Caleb froze. Ethan glanced at him, something unreadable passing across his face. "He's here too." Lily's fingers twitched. "Can he talk to me?" Caleb's mouth went dry. He slid off the bed and took a hesitant step closer. "Hi," he said softly. Her face brightened immediately. "You didn't leave." "No," he said. "I said I wouldn't." She smiled, small and sure. "I knew you wouldn't." Ethan watched them, chest tight. He'd spent years teaching Lily not to trust strangers blindly, teaching her to listen for danger, to feel when something was wrong. And yet here she was, calm and certain, her trust given without hesitation. That scared him more than the bridge. The doctor came in soon after. Questions were asked, answers were given. Lily slept through most of it, exhaustion pulling her under again. Ethan answered everything he could, signed forms, nodded when he was supposed to nod. Then the questions shifted. "And the other child?" the doctor asked, glancing at Caleb's chart. "Do we have a guardian?" Caleb felt the familiar cold crawl up his spine. Ethan didn't hesitate. "I am," the doctor raised an eyebrow. "Sir, I understand the circumstances, but we'll need—" "I know," Ethan said evenly. "And I'll handle it." There was something in his voice that shut the conversation down, not aggression, authority, the kind that came from men who had stood their ground long before paperwork entered the room. The doctor nodded slowly. "All right. Social services will want to speak with you." Caleb's breath hitched. Ethan caught it. He turned slightly, lowering his voice. "Hey," he said, "look at me." Caleb did. "You didn't do anything wrong," Ethan said. "You hear me?" Caleb nodded, but his hands trembled anyway. "I'm not letting anyone disappear you," Ethan continued. "Not today, not ever." The words settled heavy in the air. Dangerous words, promising words. Caleb had learned early that promises were things people said when they felt good, before they left. Social services arrived before noon. A woman with kind eyes and a tight smile sat across from Ethan in a small room that smelled like coffee and old paper. Caleb sat in the corner, legs pulled up, jacket folded in his lap like armor. "We just want to understand the situation," the woman said gently. "Caleb, is it?" He nodded. "Do you have somewhere you stay?" Caleb shrugged. "Sometimes." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "And family?" Caleb shook his head. The woman sighed softly, scribbling something down. "Ethan, what's your relationship to the child?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He thought of Lily's hand clutching at empty air, of Caleb standing between her and the river, of the look in his eyes when the rope came down, not hope, not relief, but calculation, survival. "He's family," Ethan said finally. The woman looked up. "Sir?" "Not by blood," Ethan added, "by choice." Silence stretched. "I understand the sentiment," she said carefully. "But legally—" "I know the law," Ethan interrupted. "Not harsh, just firm." And I'm telling you, this kid doesn't go back to the street. Caleb's heart pounded so hard it hurt. The woman studied Ethan for a long moment, then turned back to her notes. There are temporary options, she said. Emergency placement. Foster. No, Ethan said. He stays with me. That's not how this works. Ethan leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. Then make it work. The woman hesitated. You ride with a motorcycle club, she said carefully. That raises concerns. Ethan didn't flinch. We raise kids too, he said. Some of the best people I know grew up with nothing but rules and loyalty. Caleb stared at him. The woman closed her folder. I'll need to consult with my supervisor. Ethan nodded. Do that. She left. The room felt smaller after she was gone. Caleb stared at the floor. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. I'm used to it. Ethan's voice softened. That's the problem. Caleb looked up. No kid should be used to surviving alone, Ethan said. That's not strength, that's damage. The word landed hard. Caleb opened his mouth, then closed it again. He didn't know how to argue with that. Lily was discharged late afternoon. A boot wrapped her ankle. Crutches leaned against the wall. She complained about the smell of the hallway and the echo of wheels on tile. Is he coming? She asked as they wheeled her out. Yes, Ethan said. He is. She smiled and reached out until her fingers brushed Caleb's sleeve. Good. Outside, the rain had stopped. The parking lot was full of motorcycles. They stood in neat lines, engines silent, chrome catching the weak sun. Men and women leaned against them. Old, young, scarred, tired, every one of them wearing the same patch. Caleb froze. Lily tilted her head. It sounds big. Ethan smiled faintly. It is. As they approached, heads turned. Conversation stopped. A tall man with gray in his beard stepped forward, eyes scanning Lily, then settling on Caleb. That him? He asked. Ethan nodded. Yeah. The man looked at Caleb for a long moment, then held out a hand. Name's Roach, he said. You hungry? Caleb hesitated. Lily answered for him. Yes. Roach grinned. Good. We're stopping. Caleb looked around at the bikes, the people, the sheer weight of presence. This wasn't pity. This wasn't charity. This was something else. As Ethan helped Lily into the truck, Caleb stood there, unsure where to put himself. Ethan clapped a hand on his shoulder. You ride with us now, he said. At least for a while. Caleb swallowed. And if I don't want to? Ethan met his eyes. Then we'll still feed you. That almost broke him. The engines roared to life one by one, a low thunder rolling across the lot. Lily smiled at the sound, resting her head back against the seat. Caleb climbed into the truck, heart racing, mind screaming that this was too much, too fast, too good to last. But as the convoy pulled onto the road, something strange happened. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like running. He didn't know where the road led. But for now, he was on it. They didn't go straight to Ethan's place. Caleb noticed that first. The truck rolled past the exit he expected, then another. The city thinned out, buildings giving way to long stretches of road bordered by wet fields and bare trees. The convoy kept formation, bikes flanking the truck like a moving wall, engines steady, disciplined. No one raced ahead, no one lagged behind. It wasn't a parade. It was protection. Caleb sat stiff in the passenger seat, hands clasped in his lap, every muscle tuned for the moment something went wrong. He counted turns, counted minutes. Old habits died hard. Lily dozed beside him, head tilted toward the window, breathing slow and even. Every now and then she shifted, fingers brushing his sleeve, and each time she did, his chest tightened like something fragile inside him was being handled without permission. You okay back there? Ethan asked, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. Caleb nodded automatically, then realized Ethan couldn't see it. Yeah. Ethan didn't press. That mattered. They turned down a gravel road that wound toward a low cluster of buildings half hidden by trees. A wide, squat structure sat at the center. Metal siding, faded sign, a few trucks parked out front. A clubhouse, Caleb realized. Not the kind from movies, no neon, no skulls, just a place that had been used and repaired and used again. The bikes rolled in first, engines cutting one by one until the sudden quiet rang in Caleb's ears. Doors opened. People moved with purpose, not curiosity. Someone brought a wheelchair before Ethan even asked. As they helped Lily down, she stirred, blinking behind closed eyes. Where are we? Home base, Ethan said. Just for tonight. She nodded, satisfied. It smells like oil. A few people chuckled softly. Inside, the building was warm, not fancy. Wood floors scuffed by boots, tables that had seen better years, walls lined with photographs, rides, rallies, faces caught mid-laugh, mid-fight, mid-life. Caleb scanned them instinctively, cataloging expressions. These weren't monsters. These weren't saints. They were tired. Someone handed Caleb a plate before he realized he was hungry. Chili, bread, steam rising thick and real. He stared at it for a second too long. Eat, Roach said, already moving away. No expectation, no hovering. Caleb ate fast at first, then slower, body realizing it was allowed to stop guarding every bite. His hands shook once, then steadied. He finished the plate. Someone wordlessly slid another toward him. Across the room, Ethan sat with Lily on a couch, her boot propped up on pillows. She talked quietly, telling him what the bridge sounded like when it broke, how the river changed pitch when it rose. Ethan listened like every word mattered. Caleb watched from the edge of the room, unsure where he fit now that the immediate danger had passed. That was when the phone rang. Ethan stiffened as soon as he saw the screen. He answered without moving. Cole, a pause, his jaw tightened. Yes, he said. He's here. Another pause, longer this time. No, Ethan said, voice hardening. He doesn't go anywhere without me. Caleb's stomach dropped. Ethan listened in silence, eyes fixed on a point in the distance. When he spoke again, his tone was controlled, the kind of calm that came from deep restraint. I understand the process, he said. I don't agree with it. A beat. Tomorrow, Ethan said. You want to talk? You come here. He ended the call and set the phone down carefully. Roach appeared at his side without a word. Problem? Ethan nodded once. Social services. Roach snorted softly. Figures. Caleb pushed back from the table before he realized he was standing. I can go, he said quickly. I don't have to stay. Every head in the room turned, not hostile, not alarmed, assessing. Ethan stood slowly. No, he said. You don't. Caleb swallowed. They'll take me. Ethan met his eyes, not without a fight. The word fight echoed in Caleb's skull, sharp and wrong. I don't want trouble. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Trouble already came, he said. You just didn't run from it. That night, Caleb slept on a couch with a blanket that smelled like detergent and old leather. He woke twice, heart racing, convinced he'd overslept and missed the moment everything collapsed. Each time, the room was quiet, steady, safe in a way that made him uneasy. Morning brought sunlight through dusty windows and the sound of coffee brewing. Ethan was already up, talking quietly with a man in a suit who looked wildly out of place among the boots and patches. A lawyer, Caleb guessed, the kind that didn't smile. Lily sat at the table with a coloring book someone had found, tongue caught between her teeth as she concentrated. When she heard Caleb's footsteps, she looked up and smiled. Morning, she said. Morning, he replied, voice rough. She tilted her head. You sound like you stayed. He nodded. I did. Good, she said simply, and went back to coloring. The meeting happened mid-morning. 2 social workers, 1 clipboard, polite voices, careful words. They asked Caleb questions he'd learned not to answer directly. Where had he slept? How long? Why? He gave half-truths, shrugs, silence where it mattered. Ethan filled in the gaps without lying. He didn't paint himself as a savior, didn't dramatize. He stated facts like terms of a deal. He saved my daughter, Ethan said. He didn't hesitate, didn't ask for anything. One of the workers glanced at Lily, then back at Ethan. That doesn't make you his guardian. No, Ethan agreed, but it makes me responsible. The room went quiet. Finally, the older worker sighed. Temporary placement, she said. Short term, we'll review. Ethan nodded. He stays here. They didn't argue. After they left, Caleb stood frozen, waiting for the feeling he'd learned to expect. The drop, the yank, the sudden reversal. It didn't come. Ethan clapped him on the shoulder. Looks like you're stuck with us, he said. Caleb laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. You don't even know me. Ethan met his gaze. I know enough. That afternoon, Roach tossed Caleb a rag and pointed to a row of bikes. If you're going to stay, he said, you might as well learn how not to break things. Caleb stared at the grease-streaked chrome. I don't know anything about bikes, Roach grinned. Perfect. They showed him small things, how to hold a wrench, how to listen to an engine instead of forcing it, No yelling, no mocking, just correction and patience. Caleb's hands learned the work faster than he expected. The logic of it, cause and effect, fix something, see it run again. It felt honest. As the sun dipped low, Ethan watched from the doorway, Lily beside him in her chair. "He doesn't move like a scared kid," she said suddenly. Ethan glanced down. "No?" "He's careful," Lily said, "but he doesn't hide." Ethan studied Caleb, bent over an engine, brow furrowed in concentration. "He's been hiding a long time," he said, "just not from the same things." Lily nodded. "He stayed when it was loud." Ethan smiled faintly. "Yeah, he did." That night Caleb lay awake again, but this time it wasn't fear that kept him there. It was the weight of something new pressing in on him. Belonging, maybe. Or the terrifying thought that this place might be real enough to lose. The road began before anyone said the word. It started in the quiet ways. In the way Ethan checked the weather twice before sunrise. In the way Roach made 3 phone calls and didn't explain any of them. In the way bikes were rolled out of the back one by one, tanks topped off, chains checked, tires pressed with practiced thumbs. No speeches, no announcements. Caleb noticed because he had learned to read rooms for danger long before he learned to read books. Something was coming. He stood near the open bay door, hands blackened with grease, watching the men and women move. Each of them had a rhythm. Each of them carried their history in how they walked, how they spoke, how they didn't speak. This wasn't a gathering. It was an alignment. Ethan joined him without a word, leaning against the doorframe. The morning air was cool, carrying the smell of wet earth and fuel. "We're riding today," Ethan said. Caleb nodded. "I figured." "You don't have to come." That made Caleb look at him. Really look. That wasn't a question. Ethan's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "No, it wasn't." Across the room, Lily sat at the table with a woman named June, a medic, Caleb had learned, who was re-wrapping her ankle with calm, gentle hands. Lily hummed softly, something tuneless but steady. "She stays here," Ethan said. "June too." Caleb nodded again. "Good." They didn't say why they were riding. They didn't need to. Caleb had heard enough the night before. Social services, reviews, temporary placement, words that meant time. Time meant risk. The world had a way of correcting things it considered mistakes. Ethan wasn't going to let that happen quietly. The first engine turned over at 7:14 a.m., a low, patient sound, not a roar, more like a throat clearing. Others followed, one by one. The sound layered, thickened, filled the space until the air itself seemed to vibrate. Caleb felt it in his chest, in his teeth, in the old fear that told him to run from loud things. But he didn't move. Roach swung a leg over his bike and looked at Caleb. "You ride?" Caleb shook his head. "Never." Roach nodded. "You will." Ethan glanced over. "He rides with me." That settled it. They brought out a helmet that didn't quite fit right. Too big. Too many scratches. Caleb held it like something fragile. "Just sit," Ethan said, mounting his bike. "Hold on. Don't lean unless I lean." Caleb climbed on behind him, movements careful, precise. He wrapped his arms around Ethan's waist without thinking, then stiffened, embarrassed. Ethan didn't comment. The gates rolled open. They pulled out in pairs, then fours, then a long, measured line that stretched down the gravel road and onto the highway. No sirens, no rush. Just momentum. Caleb had never been on a motorcycle before. Not like this. The road rushed beneath them, wind clawing at his jacket, the world sharpening at the edges. Fear flared, pure, instinctive, then settled into something else as he adjusted, learned to breathe with the machine instead of against it. Ethan rode steady. No sudden moves, no showing off. They weren't running, they were arriving. An hour out, they stopped. Not at a diner, not at a gas station, at a rest area overlooking a wide stretch of valley, mist still clinging to the low ground. Engines cut, helmets came off. The sudden quiet rang louder than the ride. Caleb slid off the bike, legs shaky. He steadied himself, heart pounding, then realized he was smiling. That scared him more than the speed. A man named Graves, tall, lean, eyes like old glass, stepped up beside Ethan. "He coming?" he asked, nodding toward Caleb. Ethan followed the gesture. "Yeah." Graves studied Caleb for a long moment. "You sure?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "I am." Graves nodded once. That was all. They didn't talk about where they were going. They talked about other things instead. Tires, weather, an engine that had been making a noise for weeks. This was how they handled fear, by refusing to feed it. Caleb listened, learned names, learned silences. Someone handed him a bottle of water. Another offered a granola bar. No one asked where he came from. No one asked why he stayed. That mattered. They rode again. The city came back into view by late morning, concrete and glass rising from the haze. Traffic thickened, then parted around them like something instinctive. People looked, some stared, some pretended not to. Ethan took an exit Caleb recognized. The social services building sat squat and anonymous between a dental office and a tax consultant. Beige, forgettable, designed to feel smaller than it was. They didn't park out front. They parked across the street. Clean, orderly, engines off. They walked, no patches visible. Vests zipped, jackets plain. But there were a lot of them. Caleb felt it as they crossed the street, the shift in the air, the way people's attention snapped into place. Fear, curiosity, judgment, all the old reactions. The automatic doors slid open. The lobby was quiet. A few chairs, a reception desk, a woman typing. She looked up. Her eyes widened before she could stop them. Ethan stepped forward, calm, polite. "We're here to speak with someone about a case." The woman swallowed. "Do you have an appointment?" "Yes," Ethan said. "Now?" There was a pause. Then she nodded, picked up the phone. They waited. Caleb stood near the back of the group, hands in his pockets, pulse hammering. This was the part where he usually disappeared, slipped out while adults argued, let systems grind on without him. Ethan glanced back once, caught his eye, and held it. Stay. They were ushered into a conference room. Glass walls, long table, neutral art meant to calm people who were already drowning. 2 administrators arrived, then a supervisor. Then a lawyer Caleb recognized from the clubhouse. The conversation stayed civil. For 10 minutes. Then the words started stacking up. Policy, procedure, liability, best interest of the child. Caleb shrank into himself, shoulders curling in, ready for the moment his name became a problem to be solved. Ethan listened. Let them talk. When they finished, he spoke. "You're right," he said. "You have a system. And that system fails kids like Caleb every day." A stiff silence followed. "He didn't fall through the cracks," Ethan continued. "He was pushed." One of the administrators bristled. "Sir." "You don't get to interrupt me," Ethan said, not loud, not angry, just final. The room went still. "You want to talk about best interest?" Ethan went on. "He saved my daughter. He stayed when every instinct told him to run. He protected someone weaker than him without expecting a reward." Caleb stared at the table, throat tight. "He's already better than most adults I know," Ethan said, "and you want to put him back into a system that taught him to disappear." The supervisor folded her hands. "We can't make exceptions based on emotion." Ethan nodded. "Good. Then make them based on facts." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were statements, witness accounts, medical notes, photographs, a timeline, and at the top, Lily's words, recorded, transcribed. He stayed when it was loud. The supervisor read it twice. The room stayed quiet for a long time. Finally, she looked up. "Temporary guardianship," she said slowly, "with conditions, home checks, follow-ups." Ethan nodded. "Done." Caleb's head snapped up. "Wait." Ethan didn't look at him. "It's okay." The supervisor hesitated. "This isn't permanent." Ethan met her gaze. "Neither is neglect." That was the end of it. Outside, the sun was higher now. The bikes waited where they'd been left, patient and unmoved. Caleb stood on the sidewalk, dizzy with it all. The ride, the room, the words spoken about him like he mattered. Roach clapped him on the back. "Guess you're officially trouble now." Caleb managed a weak smile. Ethan handed him the helmet again. "Ready?" Caleb hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." They rode back slower, not because they had to, because no one was chasing them. At the clubhouse, Lily waited. She turned her head as they came in. "You went far," she said. Ethan smiled. "We did." She reached out until her fingers found Caleb's sleeve. "You came back." Caleb swallowed. "I told you I would." She smiled, satisfied. That night, as the engines cooled and the sun bled out behind the trees, Caleb sat on the steps outside, watching the last light fade from the road. He still didn't know how long this would last, but for the first time, the road behind him didn't feel like something he was running from. It felt like something he had walked on and survived. The road didn't feel the same on the way back. Caleb noticed it as soon as the bikes rolled out of the city and the buildings began to thin again. The noise was identical, engines steady, wind tearing past, tires humming over asphalt, but something inside him had shifted. Before, every mile had felt like borrowed time. Now it felt earned, paid for in full. He sat behind Ethan, arms locked around his waist, helmet pressed close to Ethan's back. He no longer flinched when the bike leaned. He followed the movement without thinking, body learning the rhythm of trust faster than his mind could explain it. They rode in silence for long stretches, not the tense kind, the kind that didn't demand to be filled. When they finally turned off the highway and onto the long stretch of road leading back to the clubhouse, the sun was already low, staining the sky orange and red. Shadows stretched across the pavement like fingers reaching for something that was leaving. They didn't stop at the gate. They kept riding. Caleb felt the change immediately, the subtle shift in formation, the way the bikes tightened around them, the way Ethan's posture straightened. This wasn't routine. This was intentional. "Where are we going?" Caleb asked, voice muffled inside the helmet. Ethan didn't turn his head. "Somewhere I should have taken you earlier." The road narrowed. Trees closed in on both sides, their branches forming a loose canopy overhead. Gravel crunched under the tires as pavement gave way to dirt. The air cooled, heavy with the smell of pine and damp earth. They rode another 10 minutes before the bike slowed, then stopped. Caleb climbed off stiffly, boots sinking slightly into soft ground. He pulled the helmet off and looked around. It was a clearing, not large, not dramatic, just a quiet pocket of land tucked away from everything else. A single wooden fence ran along one edge, old and weathered. Beyond it, the ground sloped gently downward toward a small river that moved slow and patient through the trees. At the center of the clearing stood a stone marker. No decorations, no flags, just a name carved deep enough to last. Ethan dismounted and removed his gloves slowly, like he was taking something off that didn't belong there. He didn't speak right away. Neither did anyone else. The engines were silent now. "This is where we come when we lose one," Roach said quietly, stepping up beside Caleb. "Not for ceremonies, just to remember." Caleb swallowed. He knew better than to ask who. Ethan walked forward alone. Caleb watched his back as he crossed the clearing, broad shoulders squared, steps measured, the same man who had stood against a collapsing bridge, a room full of officials, and the weight of a broken system. But here, his movement was different, slower, careful. He stopped in front of the marker. For a long time, he said nothing. Caleb didn't know what to do with his hands. He shoved them into his jacket pockets and waited, heart beating in a way that felt too loud in the quiet. Finally, Ethan spoke. "Lily used to come here with me," he said, voice low. "Before everything else." Caleb took a step closer, then another, until he stood a few feet behind him. "She liked the river," Ethan continued, "said she could hear it thinking." Caleb nodded without realizing it. "She listens like that." Ethan glanced back at him briefly, surprised. Then he nodded once and turned back to the stone. "This is her mother," he said. Caleb's chest tightened. "She died 5 years ago," Ethan went on. "Car accident, drunk driver, didn't see the red light, didn't see her." His jaw tightened, the words scraping their way out. "Lily survived, but something in me didn't." Caleb didn't interrupt. He had learned when silence was the right response. "I kept riding," Ethan said, "kept the club tight, kept moving. Thought if I stayed loud enough, fast enough, I wouldn't hear what I lost." He exhaled slowly. Didn't work. Caleb stared at the stone, the dates, the space between them. "She'd like you," Ethan said suddenly. Caleb blinked. "What?" Ethan turned fully now. His eyes were tired but clear. "My wife. She believed in taking people in before they fell too far, believed no one ended up alone by accident." Caleb felt something twist painfully in his chest. "I didn't plan to be alone." "I know," Ethan said. "Neither did she." They stood there together as the light shifted and the shadows lengthened. No one rushed them. No one filled the space with words. Finally, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a folded piece of paper, worn thin at the creases. He set it carefully at the base of the stone. "What's that?" Caleb asked. "A promise," Ethan said. "One I didn't know how to keep until now." Caleb didn't ask more. When they turned back, Lily was waiting in the truck, window cracked open, her head angled toward the clearing. "You stopped," she said. Ethan smiled faintly. Yeah, I like this place, she said. It feels quiet in a good way. Caleb glanced back at the stone once more before climbing in. The ride home was slower, deliberate. No one pushed the speed. No one broke formation. The road unwound beneath them like something familiar now. Not an escape route, not a threat, just a line connecting where they'd been to where they were going. Back at the clubhouse, night settled in gently. Lights flicked on inside. The smell of food drifted through open doors. Someone laughed, a low, tired sound that didn't carry very far. Caleb helped Lily inside, careful of her ankle. She leaned on him without hesitation, trusting his balance. You're getting better at walking with me, she said. He shrugged. You don't move much when you're confident. She smiled. I am. Later, when the place had quieted again and most of the bikes were parked for the night, Caleb sat on the steps outside, elbows resting on his knees. The air was cool now, crickets starting their slow rhythm in the grass. Ethan joined him, lowering himself onto the step beside him with a soft grunt. You okay? Ethan asked. Caleb nodded, then shook his head. I don't know. Ethan accepted that. Fair answer. Caleb stared out at the darkened road. I've never stayed anywhere this long without waiting for it to end. Ethan looked at him, really looked at him this time. You don't have to decide anything tonight. Caleb hesitated. And if I mess this up? Ethan's voice was steady. Then we fix it. Caleb let out a shaky breath. That's not how it usually goes. I know, Ethan said. That's why it matters. They sat there in silence again, not because there was nothing left to say, but because for once, silence wasn't dangerous. Inside, Lily laughed at something June said. The sound drifted out through the open door, light and unforced. Caleb closed his eyes for a second and listened. The road behind him was still there, but for the first time, it wasn't calling him back. The trouble didn't arrive loud. It came the way real trouble always did, wrapped in rules, paperwork, and people who spoke softly while closing doors. Caleb felt it before anyone said anything. A tension in the clubhouse that hadn't been there the night before. Conversations stopped a little too fast. Phones rang and were answered outside. Roach stood by the window longer than usual, eyes fixed on the road like he was waiting for something to appear. Ethan noticed too. He didn't ask questions right away. He finished tightening a bolt on one of the bikes, wiped his hands on a rag, then looked up. What is it? Roach didn't turn around. County's getting nervous. About? You. Ethan nodded once. Good. Caleb watched from the edge of the room, heart ticking faster. Nervous systems didn't like things they couldn't categorize. He knew that. He had lived between categories his whole life. June came in from the back hallway, expression tight. Hospital called, she said. Someone filed a complaint. Ethan's jaw set. About Lily? No, June replied. About him. Every eye in the room shifted to Caleb. He stiffened instantly, muscles pulling in, preparing for the impact. I didn't do anything, he said. I swear. Ethan was already moving. He crossed the room and stopped in front of him, blocking his view of everyone else. I know. Roach finally turned. Anonymous report, neglect, unsafe environment. You know the script. Caleb felt the familiar hollow open up under his ribs. Anonymous meant untraceable. Script meant pre-written endings. They're sending someone? Ethan asked. Roach nodded. 2 hours, maybe less. The room didn't explode into chaos. That would have been easier. Instead, it went quiet in a way that meant everyone understood the stakes. Ethan ran a hand over his face. Okay, Caleb blinked. That's it? Okay? That's it, Ethan said. We don't hide. We don't run. That's a bad idea, Caleb said quickly. They don't care what's true. They care what fits. Ethan crouched slightly so they were eye level. Then we make it not fit. Outside, a black sedan rolled slowly past the gate. Caleb saw it through the window and felt his stomach drop. They're already here. No, Roach said. That's not them. The car didn't stop, didn't speed up, just passed, slow enough to be noticed, slow enough to be intentional. Ethan followed its path with his eyes. That's pressure, he said. Different kind. Caleb swallowed. From who? Ethan didn't answer. An hour later, the county vehicle arrived, white, clean, unremarkable. 2 people stepped out, clipboards, neutral expressions, 1 man, 1 woman. They walked like they already had opinions and were just here to confirm them. Ethan met them at the door. Mr. Cole, the woman said, we're here to conduct a welfare check. Come in, Ethan replied. Caleb stayed where he was, still, visible. That was the hardest part. The questions were predictable. Sleeping arrangements, food, supervision, safety, association. The man glanced at the walls, at the bikes, at the people moving through the space. This is not a traditional household. No, Ethan said calmly. It's not. Children require stability, the woman added. Ethan nodded. So do adults. That doesn't mean we all get it. Caleb clenched his fists. And the child? The man asked, looking directly at Caleb now. How long have you been homeless? Caleb opened his mouth, then closed it again. Ethan answered. Longer than he should have been. The man's pen scratched across paper. And you believe this environment is appropriate? Ethan's voice stayed even. I believe it's safer than where he was. The woman glanced at Lily, who sat at the table with June, hands folded, head tilted slightly as she listened. And what does she think? The woman asked gently. Lily turned her head toward the sound. About what? About him staying here, the woman said. Lily didn't hesitate. He stayed with me when everyone else was loud. He didn't leave. Silence settled. The man cleared his throat. We appreciate your input, sweetheart, but... No, Ethan cut in. You will appreciate it. The man bristled. Sir? You don't get to talk over her, Ethan said, tone hardening for the first time. Not after what she survived. The woman held up a hand. Let's stay professional. Ethan leaned back slightly, breathing controlled. Then listen professionally. Caleb felt his chest burn. He had never been defended like this, not publicly, not without conditions. The inspection continued. Rooms were checked, food was noted, first aid supplies were acknowledged, emergency plans were discussed. Every box they expected to check wrong came up clean. That didn't stop them. This lifestyle, the man said finally, exposes a child to risk. Ethan nodded. So does the street. The woman closed her folder. We'll need to escalate this. Caleb's heart dropped. To who? Ethan asked. Family court, she replied. The word landed heavy. After they left, the room exhaled. Caleb sank onto a chair, head in his hands. I told you, he said quietly. This always happens. Ethan sat across from him. Not always. They'll take me, Caleb said. Maybe not today, but soon. Ethan's eyes were steady. No, that's not up to you. Ethan stood. Then we make it up to someone who will listen. That afternoon, they rode again. Not far, not fast. To a law office downtown with glass walls and old photos on the shelves. The lawyer, same one from before, didn't smile when Ethan laid everything out. He didn't frown either. He listened. This won't be clean, he said eventually. Someone wants that kid gone from your orbit. Caleb stiffened. Why? The lawyer glanced at Ethan. Because you don't fit, because you don't ask permission. Ethan nodded. Who? The lawyer leaned back. Doesn't matter yet. What matters is this goes public. Caleb's stomach twisted. I don't want that. Ethan looked at him. I know. But hiding didn't keep you safe either, the lawyer said. It just made you invisible. Caleb flinched. That night, another car rolled past the clubhouse. This one slowed longer, and someone inside took pictures. Roach watched from the shadows. They're pushing. Ethan stared into the dark. Then we push back. Caleb's voice was barely above a whisper. I don't want you to lose everything because of me. Ethan turned to him. You didn't cause this. That doesn't mean I won't be the cost. Ethan stepped closer. You're not a cost. You're the reason. Inside, Lily listened to the engines idling outside. She frowned slightly. Something's wrong, she said. June brushed her hair back gently. Maybe. People are scared, Lily said, but not the good kind. Ethan heard her from the doorway, and in that moment, he understood exactly what they were up against. Not fists, not threats. A system that punished anyone who refused to let broken things stay broken. The road ahead wasn't going to be quiet, but neither were they. The boy stopped trying to disappear, not all at once, not in a way anyone could point to and say there. It happened in pieces, in posture, in silence, in the way Caleb no longer positioned himself near exits by default. The instinct was still there, coiled and alert, but it wasn't in control anymore. That was new, and dangerous in its own way. The morning after the county visit, Ethan found him in the garage before sunrise, sitting on an upturned crate, staring at a stripped-down engine like it might explain something if he looked long enough. You didn't sleep, Ethan said. Caleb shrugged. Didn't need to. Ethan leaned against the workbench. That's not the same thing. Caleb didn't answer. They worked in silence for a while. The kind of silence that wasn't empty. It carried weight, questions, choices waiting to be named. Outside, the road was quiet. Too quiet. Eventually, Ethan spoke. "They're not done," Caleb nodded. "Neither are we." The words surprised both of them. By midday, the first call came, then the second. Then a message left without a number. Roach listened to the voicemail once, jaw tightening, then deleted it. "Same tune," he said. "Concerned citizens. Worried about the kid." Caleb felt the room tilt. "They keep calling me the kid." Ethan glanced at him. "You want a name? We use a name." Caleb hesitated. Names had always been risky. Names stuck. Names were how people found you again. "My name's Caleb," he said, louder than before. "Not the kid." Ethan nodded. "Good." That afternoon, a reporter showed up at the gate. Young, polite, too clean for this place. He didn't ask to come in. He just waited, notebook tucked under his arm like he was hoping the story might walk out to him on its own. Roach spotted him first. "Media." Ethan didn't sigh, didn't curse. He just nodded. "Send him away." Caleb stood up. "No." Every head turned. Ethan studied him carefully. "You sure?" Caleb's hands trembled slightly, but he didn't sit back down. "They're already telling my story without me in it." The reporter looked up, startled, as Caleb stepped into the sunlight. "What do you want?" Caleb asked. The reporter cleared his throat. "I'm just trying to understand what's happening here." Caleb nodded slowly. "Then listen." He didn't give his whole story. He didn't talk about nights under bridges or the places he'd slept where no one was supposed to be. He talked about the river, about staying, about a girl who couldn't see and a man who refused to let her disappear. He talked about choice. The reporter scribbled furiously. "And now?" the reporter asked. "What do you want now?" Caleb looked back at the clubhouse, at Ethan, at Lily's window upstairs where the curtain moved slightly as if she was listening. "I want to stay," Caleb said. "That's it." The article ran the next morning. It wasn't flattering. It wasn't cruel either. It was human, messy, inconvenient. It named Ethan. It named the club. It named Caleb. And it made one thing very clear. This wasn't a feel-good rescue story. It was a confrontation. By noon, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. Support came first, donations, messages, people who recognized pieces of themselves in a boy who stayed when no one asked him to. Then came the other calls, warnings, thinly veiled threats, suggestions. "Someone high up wants this to go away," the lawyer said over speakerphone. "They don't like the attention." Ethan's voice was calm. "They don't have to like it." Caleb stood nearby, listening, jaw set. "This is my fault." Ethan ended the call and turned to him. "No, this is what happens when you stop letting people erase you." That evening, a court date appeared on the calendar. Not tomorrow, not urgent enough to look panicked, soon enough to feel like pressure. Lily sensed it before anyone told her. "You're all walking heavier," she said at dinner. June smiled gently. "You always notice," Lily frowned. "Are they trying to take Caleb away?" No one answered right away. Ethan finally said, "They're trying." Lily's hand closed around Caleb's sleeve, tight. "You can't." Caleb swallowed. "They might." She shook her head. "No." Ethan watched her, something aching behind his eyes. "It's not that simple, sweetheart." Lily lifted her chin. "It is for me." That night, Caleb sat on the roof of the clubhouse, legs dangling over the edge, watching headlights slide along the distant highway. He felt exposed, named, seen. Ethan joined him a few minutes later, handing him a soda without comment. "You scared?" Ethan asked. Caleb nodded. "Yeah." "Good," Ethan said. "Means you're paying attention." Caleb stared out at the dark. "If they make me leave, I don't want her to think I chose it." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Then don't leave quietly." Caleb turned to him. "What does that mean?" "It means you tell the truth," Ethan said, "even if it costs." The cost came faster than expected. 2 days later, a temporary removal order landed on the lawyer's desk, not executed, just prepared. The message was clear. That night, the clubhouse filled, not with noise, with presence. Bikes lined the road, cars parked along the fence, people came who didn't wear patches, teachers, mechanics, nurses, folks who had seen the article and recognized something unfinished in it. They didn't chant, they didn't shout, they stood. Caleb watched from the steps, heart pounding. He had never been stood for before. Not like this. A woman stepped forward holding a hand-lettered sign. He stayed. Let him stay. Another followed. Then another. Lily sat beside Caleb, wrapped in a blanket, her head tilted toward the crowd. "There are a lot of heartbeats," she said softly. Caleb's throat closed. Ethan stepped up beside him. "This is what standing looks like," he said. "Not loud, just unmovable." Caleb whispered, "I don't deserve this." Ethan shook his head. "You earned it." Across the road, the same black sedan idled again, longer this time. A camera lens caught the light. Roach leaned in close. "They're watching." Caleb didn't look away. "Let them." For the first time, he didn't want to vanish. He wanted to be counted. The road was no longer just behind him or ahead of him. It was under his feet, and he was still standing. The truth didn't come from the courtroom. It came from a place no one was watching anymore. Caleb learned that the night Ethan finally told him to stop pretending this was just about paperwork. They were in the garage, late. Too late for normal work, too early for sleep. The clubhouse had quieted, the crowd gone home, bikes cooling outside like resting animals. Rain tapped lightly on the metal roof, slow and patient. Ethan sat on an overturned bucket, elbows on his knees, helmet on the floor between his boots. He looked older like this, not worn, exposed. "They're not really after you," Ethan said. Caleb didn't look up from the engine he was cleaning. "Feels like they are," Ethan nodded. "That's because you're the lever." Caleb paused. "For what?" "For me," Ethan said. "For the club." Caleb straightened slowly. "I don't understand." Ethan picked up the helmet, turned it in his hands like he was weighing something. "You ever notice how some people don't care what you do until you make them uncomfortable?" Caleb thought of the anonymous calls, the prepared order, the car that kept coming back. "Yeah. They don't care that I took you in," Ethan continued. "They care that I didn't ask." Caleb frowned. "Ask who?" Ethan exhaled through his nose. "The same people who've been waiting years for me to slip." Caleb's chest tightened. "Slip how?" Ethan looked at him now, really looked. "I used to run numbers for the club," he said. "A long time ago. Not illegal ones, quiet ones. The kind that kept us clean when other clubs went dirty. The kind that made certain people very angry." Caleb said nothing. "I testified once," Ethan went on. "Not publicly, not in court, behind closed doors, helped bury a case that would have burned half the county to the ground." Caleb's voice came out rough. "Why?" "Because it was going to cost lives," Ethan said, "and because my wife asked me to stop writing angry." The rain tapped harder now. "They never forgave me," Ethan said. "They couldn't touch me without cause, couldn't touch the club without noise, but a homeless kid, a blind girl, that's leverage they understand." Caleb felt sick. "So this is about settling scores." Ethan nodded once. "Always is." Caleb took a step back. "Then I really shouldn't be here." Ethan stood up fast. "No. You just said—" "I said they're using you," Ethan interrupted. "Not that you're the problem." Caleb shook his head. "People get hurt when they stand next to you." Ethan's jaw tightened. "People get hurt when they stand alone." They stood there, the truth hanging between them like exposed wiring. The next piece fell into place the following afternoon. June came back from town with a look she didn't bother to hide. "I found something," she said. They gathered in the small office upstairs. Ethan, Roach, the lawyer on speaker, June standing by the window. "There's a donor," June said. "Funds the county's child placement programs. Has for years." Roach snorted. "Let me guess. Clean on paper." "Immaculate," June replied. "And very invested in appropriate environments." The lawyer's voice crackled through the speaker. "Name?" June said it. Ethan closed his eyes. Caleb watched the reaction, heart pounding. "You know him." "I know of him," Ethan said quietly. "He was on the other side of that buried case." Silence. "So this isn't about Caleb," Roach said. "It's about reminding you who still has reach." The lawyer cleared his throat. "If this goes to court, they'll push for removal on moral environment grounds. The optics are ugly." Caleb felt the words like a shove. "Then don't fight it," he said. "Let me go," Ethan rounded on him. "No." "You said yourself," Caleb shot back. "They're using me. Take me out of the equation." Ethan's voice dropped. "That's what they want." Caleb's hands shook. "I don't want Lily dragged into this." As if summoned, Lily's voice came from the hallway. Too late. They all turned. She stood in the doorway, crutches tucked under her arms, chin lifted. She hadn't heard everything, but she'd heard enough. "They're scared," Lily said. "Not of Caleb, of you." Ethan swallowed. Lily, they don't like when people stay, she continued. They like when things move where they tell them to. June knelt beside her. You shouldn't be listening to this. Lily smiled faintly. I don't need to see it. She turned her head toward Caleb. You're not leaving. Caleb's chest tightened. I don't get to decide. Yes, you do, Lily said simply. You decided already. On the bridge. No one spoke after that. The hearing was scheduled 3 days later. In that time, the pressure intensified. But something else happened too. The story didn't die. More people came forward, not loudly, not for cameras, quiet affidavits, statements, teachers who remembered seeing Caleb sleep in class because he hadn't slept at all, a shop owner who'd let him sweep floors for food, a bus driver who'd noticed him riding the same route every night just to stay warm. Invisible threads surfaced. On the morning of the hearing, the black sedan parked across the street again. But this time, it wasn't alone. Other cars lined the block, not protesters, not supporters with signs, witnesses. Caleb sat in the courtroom, hands folded, heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Ethan sat beside him, solid and unmoving. Lily wasn't allowed inside. That hurt the most. The county lawyer spoke first, calm, polished. He talked about risk, about precedent, about the danger of sentiment clouding judgment. Then Ethan's lawyer stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize. He told the truth. About a boy who survived because he learned how not to be noticed. About a system that mistook disappearance for resilience. About a man who refused to let one more person vanish quietly. He didn't mention the donor by name. He didn't have to. Because when the judge asked who had funded the anonymous complaint, the answer was already on the record. The room shifted. Not triumph. Exposure. The judge leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. This court does not remove children to settle old debts, she said. Caleb's breath caught. Temporary guardianship was extended, indefinitely. Outside, the air felt different, not lighter, clearer. The black sedan pulled away without ceremony. Ethan stood on the courthouse steps for a long moment, eyes on the road. They won't stop, Caleb said quietly. Ethan nodded. No, but they lost today. Yes, Ethan said. They did. When they got back to the clubhouse, Lily was waiting. She didn't ask what happened. She just reached out and took Caleb's hand. You came back, she said. Caleb smiled, shaky but real. Yeah. The truth had finally surfaced, not the kind that ends fights, the kind that tells you exactly what you're standing in front of and asks if you're willing to stay anyway. Caleb was. So was Ethan. And the road, for the first time, felt honest. They didn't celebrate the win. No cheers, no speeches, no raised fists in front of cameras. When the courthouse doors closed behind them, the club didn't rev engines or claim territory. They just moved. Quietly. The way people do when they understand that surviving something doesn't mean it's over. The ride back was slow. Ethan took the long route, not to avoid anything, but because he needed the road to stretch, needed the space between what almost happened and what didn't. Caleb felt it in the way Ethan rode, steadier than before, but heavier too, like each mile carried more meaning than the last. When they reached the clubhouse, the sun was already dropping low, turning the building copper in shadow. Lily sat on the steps wrapped in a blanket, June beside her. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need answers explained. She just listened. Caleb parked the bike and pulled his helmet off. The air smelled like dust and cooling engines. Normal, almost painfully normal. Lily turned her head. You're breathing different, she said. Caleb smiled faintly. Is that good or bad? It's settled, she replied, like when the rain stops but the ground's still wet. Ethan heard that. He stopped behind them, helmet dangling from his hand. That's about right. Inside, the clubhouse filled gradually. Not with crowds, just the right people. The ones who'd stood without being asked, the ones who understood that some victories were private things. Roach poured coffee instead of whiskey. Someone put food on the table without announcing it. Plates moved, chairs scraped. Life reasserted itself in small, stubborn ways. Caleb sat at the edge of it all, watching. He was used to endings that came fast, slammed doors, sharp goodbyes, the sudden need to move again. This ending was different. It didn't rush him out. It didn't demand gratitude. That made it harder. Later, when the noise softened and the room thinned, Ethan motioned him outside. They stood near the bikes, twilight settling in around them. The road beyond the gate stretched empty, darkening by the minute. "You know what today means," Ethan said. Caleb nodded. "They can't take me, not like before." "Yes," Ethan agreed, "but it also means something else." Caleb waited. "You're not just protected anymore," Ethan said. "You're seen." Caleb swallowed. "That scares me." "It should," Ethan replied honestly. "Being seen always does." They stood in silence for a moment. "I could still mess this up," Caleb said quietly. "I don't know how to be this." Ethan looked at him. "Neither did I." Caleb frowned. "You always look like you know what you're doing." Ethan let out a short breath that might have been a laugh. "That's just what responsibility looks like from the outside." He turned more fully toward Caleb. "Listen to me. I'm not here to turn you into something you're not. I'm here to give you time to figure out who you already are." Caleb stared at the ground. "And if I decide I don't belong here?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Then we help you leave on your feet instead of on the run." The words landed heavier than any promise Ethan had made before. They weren't binding. They weren't a cage. They were choice. From the doorway, Lily listened. She waited until Ethan went back inside before speaking. "You're quieter now," she said to Caleb. He sat beside her on the steps. "Thinking too much." "That's okay," she said. "Thinking keeps you from falling." He smiled faintly. "You always know when people are about to fall?" She shrugged. "I listened for the space right before." Caleb leaned back, resting his weight on his hands. "I almost left today." She turned her head sharply. "Why?" "So you wouldn't get pulled into it," he said. "So none of this would stick to you." Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched his wrist, fingers light but certain. "You don't get to decide what sticks to me." Caleb met her gaze, startled. "You stayed," she continued. "That already stuck." Inside, Ethan stood near the old photographs on the wall. One of his wife, one of Lily when she was younger, sitting on a bike too big for her, smiling like the world was nothing but open space. He felt the weight of the day settle into his bones, not as exhaustion, but as something earned. He hadn't won a war. He just refused to retreat. That night, the clubhouse slept. Not all at once, not completely, but enough. Caleb lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, listening to the building breathe around him. For the first time in years, his mind didn't map exits, didn't rehearse disappearances. Instead, it replayed moments. The knock of Lily's hand on concrete, Ethan's voice at the bridge, the judge's pause before she spoke. None of it felt like destiny. It felt like accumulation, 1,000 small decisions stacking up until staying became possible. He closed his eyes. Outside, the road waited. Not impatient, not demanding, just there. And for the first time, Caleb didn't feel like it was daring him to run. It felt like it was asking where he wanted to go next. The morning didn't arrive with answers. It arrived with light, soft, early light that crept across the gravel outside the clubhouse and settled on chrome and glass without asking permission. The kind of light that didn't demand anything. It only showed what was already there. Caleb woke before anyone else. That alone felt different. He sat up on the couch, listening. Not for danger, not for footsteps, just listening. The building was quiet in a way that felt earned, not empty. Somewhere down the hall, a floorboard creaked. Pipes sighed, a place settling into itself. He stood, pulled on his jacket, and stepped outside. The road beyond the gate stretched pale and empty, a thin ribbon disappearing into trees and distance. For most of his life, that sight had meant one thing. Leave before you're pushed. Now it meant something else. Ethan was already there. He stood by his bike, coffee in hand, staring down the road the way some people stare at water, not thinking about crossing it, just acknowledging its presence. "You always wake up early?" Caleb asked. Ethan didn't turn. "I always wake up." Caleb smiled faintly and joined him, leaning against the fence. They didn't talk for a while. They didn't need to. Eventually, Ethan spoke. "We're riding today," Caleb nodded. "I figured." "Just us," Ethan added. "No formation, no point to prove." Caleb glanced at the bike, then at the road. "Where?" Ethan shrugged. "Anywhere." They left an hour later, no convoy, no audience. Just two bikes rolling out under a sky that hadn't made up its mind yet. Caleb rode his own this time. One roach had helped him tune the night before. It wasn't fast, it wasn't pretty, but it held together. So did he. They rode without urgency, letting the road decide the pace. Past fields still wet with dew, past a river that moved steady and unconcerned, past a bridge, not the broken one, but another, older, quieter. Ethan slowed there, just for a moment. Caleb didn't ask why. They stopped when the road curved into open land and the wind picked up, cool and clean. They cut the engines and sat there, the silence settling around them like it belonged. "I didn't save you," Ethan said suddenly. Caleb frowned. "I didn't say you did." Ethan looked at him. "Good." They stood by the bikes, helmets under their arms, the road humming faintly beneath their boots. "You know what you did, though," Ethan continued. "You stood when it mattered. That's not something people teach you." Caleb stared out at the distance. "I didn't think about it." "That's the point." They rode back as the day warmed, turning toward the clubhouse when the sun was high enough to cast short shadows. Lily was waiting. She sat on the porch steps with her booted foot propped up, face tilted toward the sound of engines approaching. She smiled before they even stopped. "You came back different," she said. Caleb laughed softly. "How?" "Quieter," she replied, "but not smaller." Ethan helped her up, steady and gentle. "We're going to town," he said. "Ice cream." Lily grinned. "That's a very good reason." They went without ceremony. A truck this time, windows down, music low. People stared, then looked away, then looked again. It didn't matter. At the shop, Lily took her time choosing. Caleb watched her listen to the freezers, tapping the glass, smiling when she found what she wanted. Ethan paid without comment. They sat outside on a bench, eating slowly. Sticky fingers, melting edges. A mess no one rushed to clean. "You staying?" Lily asked Caleb, casual as if asking about the weather. Caleb didn't answer right away. Ethan didn't rush him. I don't know what that looks like yet," Caleb said finally. Lily nodded. "That's okay." Ethan glanced at him. "You don't have to know." They finished the ice cream in silence. That afternoon, Caleb helped Roach in the garage, not because he was told to, because there was work, and his hands knew what to do now. He learned the weight of tools, the patience of listening, the quiet satisfaction of something broken running again. As the sun dipped low, June changed Lily's wrap and showed Caleb how to do it next time. No big lesson, just a matter-of-fact passing on of knowledge. Later, as evening settled, the clubhouse filled again, not with tension this time, but with routine. Food on the table, someone arguing about a carburetor, someone else laughing too loud. Caleb sat on the steps with Lily, the sky darkening above them. "Do you miss your old road?" Lily asked. Caleb thought about it, about nights that blurred together, about moving just to keep moving, about being unseen because being seen hurt. "No," he said. "I think it was just a way to stay alive." She nodded. "This one's different." "Yeah," he said, "it is." Inside, Ethan watched them through the open door, not with worry, with something closer to peace than he'd felt in years. He thought of the bridge, of the river, of the moment everything could have gone another way. Some people believed fate was loud, that it announced itself with noise and fire. Ethan knew better. Fate whispered. It looked like a boy staying when he could run, like a girl listening when others shouted, like a road that didn't demand escape, only presence. That night, the engines went quiet early. Caleb lay awake for a while, listening to the building settle, to the distant sound of tires on a highway far enough away not to threaten him. He didn't count exits. He didn't rehearse endings. He thought about tomorrow, not as a place to flee, but as something to step into. Outside, the road stretched on, not as an invitation to disappear, but as a promise that wherever it led next, he wouldn't have to walk it alone.